tips and spreading in halos behind my head will dazzle you, confuse you too, distract your eye from this face you knew.
Welcome to Professor Hogchoker's deep dive into literary rock and pop.
Awake as God. The streams of worshippers at my door will make it hard to see my face. In fact,
we can't afford the royalties for Hozier's fabulous song Taken to Church. We're listening to another play into sex and religion, Hogchoker's Tomorrow When I Awake as God. Now today we will examine the punk roots from the 17th century to the 1990s and the long history of sexual metaphor, both as religion and as food, in literature and song, within this literary masterpiece by the Irish poet and singer Hozier. Please stop watching now if you are of a prudish nature. Now let's start with the original punk, John Wilmot, the second Earl of Rochester, and Hozier's opening lines. My lover's got humour, she's the giggle at a funeral. I love the use of giggle there. You have the consonance of the double G sound in an onomatopoeic fashion that almost feels like a giggle. My lover's got humour, she's the giggle at a funeral, knows everybody's disapproval. Well, John Wilmot, the first punk, born appropriately enough on April the 1st, 1647, was the very definition of inappropriate. He knew everybody's disapproval and had plenty of humour. Like Hozier's song, Wilmot's play Sodom, or the Quintessence of Debauchery, mixes sex and religion in a sublime manner, with characters like General Buggeranthos, Fuckadilla, and Canticula. There is plenty of worshipping sex. Yet it's also seen as a savage satire on the court of Charles II and his apparent willingness to tolerate the Catholic religion in Protestant England. Yet while he was the first true punk, born 141 years even before Lord Byron, mad, bad and dangerous to know Byron, that is, the word punk meant prostitute in his time, as he brings up in his poem Régime de Vivre, where his prostitute takes his money and leaves him after he vomits in her lap and falls into a drunken stupor. Upon awakening, he realizes, at once she bereaves me of money and the C-word. What a coil do I make for the loss of my punk, meaning his prostitute. I storm and I roar and I fall in a rage, and missing my whore, I bugger my page. Perhaps Wilmot should have worshipped her sooner, as Hozier recommends. Now this idea of there not being enough time to be with someone you love, for Hozier, I believe he's alluding to Andrew Marvell's To His Coy Mistress, written in the 1650s, which laments the lack of time to spend 200 years to adore each breast, because at my back I always hear time's winged chariot hurrying near. The grave's a fine and private place, but none, I think, do there embrace. So, get on with it and have sex with me, is what he's trying to say. Now, like many songs and poems through the ages, Hozier likens love and his lover to heaven. The other great Irish poet, William Butler Yeats, of course wished for the cloth of heaven to lay at his lover's feet, but could only place his dreams. If the heavens ever did speak, she is the last true mouthpiece, Hozier tells us. However, Hozier's dissatisfaction with the traditional church and religion shows more influence of the 90s punk bands than it does of Yeats. Hozier sings, each Sunday is getting more bleak, a fresh poison every week. Now this is very much claiming the punk sentiments of the Subhumans' Religious Wars, NOFX's fabulous Best God in Show, Dead Kennedy's Moral Majority, It's the New Dark Ages with fascists toting Bibles, or Hogchokers living in the future, worshipping a brutal, superseded superstition, requiring children's mutilation, sense and logic subjugation, explanation excised, why removed from conversation. Which is all particularly fitting right now, with the religious right declaring a war on compassion. Love thy neighbour, but only if he's wealthy and white. We were born sick, you heard them say, I believe is alluding to the dead Kennedy's religious bonnet. All religions make me sick. As well, of course, to original sin of Adam and Eve. Hozier tells us my church offers no absolutes. She tells me worship in the bedroom. Now, sex as religion, again, has a long history. In John Donne's Elegy to his mistress going to bed, written in the early 1600s, the bed that he shares with his mistress is a hallowed temple. And he tells her, off with that girdle, like heaven's zone glistening. Thou angel, bring'st with thee a heaven that sets our flesh upright. Hozier, of course, says, the only heaven I'll be sent to is when I'm alone with you. I was born sick, but I love it. Now, Hozier gives us a kind of chiasmus, which is a rhetorical device where grammatical structure is reversed, most famously used in ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. So reversing the we were born sick, you heard them say it, to I was born sick, but I love it. Though this sounds more like Munchausen Syndrome, the idea of making yourself sick to gain attention. Perhaps like Catholic priests, sinning with choir boys so that they can then pray for forgiveness. Command me to be well. Amen, amen, amen. From the Hebrew, amen. Meaning truth or certainty. And so on to the chorus. We've already established that the church, with its phallic steeple and vaginal nave, represents sex. Take me to church, I'll worship like a dog at the shrine of your lies. Here Hozier quotes the archetypal punks, the Stooges, now I wanna be your dog. I'll tell you my sins so you can sharpen your knife. And he extends these lines using assonance, the repetition of vowel sounds, that long vowel of I. I'll, like, shrine, lies, knife, almost mirroring the sound of chanted Latin psalms in church. Romeo, of course, refers to Juliet as his holy shrine as well. Offer me that deathless death, good God, let me give you my life. So Hozier here refers to le Petit Mort, or the little death, which is a metaphor for orgasm. Percy Bysshe Shelley, of course, called it the death which lovers love, in his poem The Boat on the Serchio. And Shakespeare often used it as a sexual metaphor. I will die bravely, like a smug bridegroom, from King Lear. Or in Much Ado About Nothing, I will live in thy heart, die in thy lap. Reminds me of another sex, punk, and religion story. When a punk record shop owner was arrested and taken to court for obscenity for refusing to remove Never Mind the Bollocks, Here's the Sex Pistols, from his store window, the Pistols managed to produce an expert witness in court, Professor James Kinsley, who was head of the School of English at the University of Nottingham at the time. And he argued the word bollocks is not obscene, and that actually it was a legitimate Old English term, here's the religion, formerly used to refer to a priest. And also that early English translations of the Bible used the word bollocks to refer to testicles, this being replaced by the word stones in the King James Version of the Bible. The judge stated, much as my colleagues and I wholeheartedly deplore this vulgar exploitation, we must reluctantly find you not guilty. Never mind the stones, here's the Sex Pistols. Doesn't have quite the same ring to it, does it? But like Hozier's Take Me to Church, a mixture of sex, religion, and punk attitude. Again, Hozier points out that this is not a Christian religion. It's definitely pagan, tied to bacchanalia and having fun and sex, not guilt. If I'm a pagan of the good times, he claims his lover's the sunlight. Now, the most important deity, of course, in many religions is the sun. Ra, the sun god and creator of everything in ancient Egypt, Helios in Greece, Surya, the Hindu sun god, on his chariot with the 7 horses representing the 7 colours of light and the 7 days of the week, the Incan Inti and Aztec Huitzilopochtli, and even more, the female sun goddesses, the Japanese queen of heaven, Amaterasu, and the Norse goddess of the sun, Sol. To keep the goddess on my side, she demands sacrifice. And the sacrifice, of course, which Hozier offers, he proffers to her in sexual metaphors. The little death, not the actual death the Aztecs were so keen on offering to please the sun god. He uses the phrase to drain the whole sea as a metaphor for oral sex, to get something shiny, that precious orgasm, sexual satisfaction that is worth more than shiny metals or gold. He goes on, something meaty for the main course. Not the first reference to sex as food, or the penis, the pork sword, the beef truncheon as meat. In All's Well That Ends Well, Shakespeare's character Parolles describes that particular organ as a date, which is better put in your pie. And even Robert Frost gets in on the act with the food metaphors as a smooth bean with wrinkled peas in his poem Putting in the Seed, in which a sturdy seedling with arched body comes, shouldering its way and shredding the earth crumbs. Hozier's next metaphor is that's a fine-looking horse, what you got in the stable. Apart from the obvious metaphor of riding, the penis has long been anthropomorphized. In the French medieval story, The Squirrel, our hero Robin persuades the girl that his member is in fact a squirrel that likes to be stroked, and then persuades her that the squirrel must search for the nuts she ate earlier by entering the lower door, par votre pont. In another 13th century tale, The Maiden Who Could Not Abide Lewd Language, she is seduced by her father's servant Davy, who convinces her that his hungry and thirsty pony would like to graze her pasture and drink from her spring. There's a very interesting horse metaphor. And as Hozier points out, we are a lot of starving faithful. That looks tasty. That looks plenty. This is hungry work. So just as the Eucharist represents eating the flesh of Christ, Hozier presents another form of eating out as worship. Staying in the great tradition of linking food and sex, right back from Fielding's The History of Tom Jones, a Foundling, written in 1749, to NOFX's Food, Sex and You, to Unknown Mortal Orchestra's Food and Sex in 2018. So we return to the chorus, and then in the final verse, no masters or kings when the ritual begins, again describing the act of making love as a ritual elevates it to a religious height. There is no sweeter innocence than our gentle sin. Another allusion to the sexual desire between Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, who say, this holy shrine, this gentle sin is this, my lips, two blushing pilgrims. Back to Hozier, in the madness and soil of that sad earthly scene, which does bring us back to that phallic metaphor and earthy metaphor of Robert Frost's Putting in the Seed, where the sturdy seedling with arched body comes, shouldering its way and shedding the earth crumbs. Yet, metaphors apart, sex is the most human act It's the only way we will continue as a race, and it's probably the most pleasurable and natural way of showing love. Only then am I human, only then am I clean, as Hozier says. Amen. Here again is Hogchoker's pain to love, life and religion. Tomorrow when I awake as God, there you are. Tune in for our next episode.
Bursting through the fresh May sky.